and then we will have ample time at the end, for Q&A, hoping to get into as many questions as you can, as Chris has mentioned. So let's get into the presentation here a little bit. All right, so, excuse me. So a little bit of background of the project here. So we've been going for about 2 years now. We did some public outreach in 2018 and have been, doing a very detailed analysis of alternative screening. And then as the alternatives were screened down to a few here at the end, a deeper dive into traffic. So we've been busy at this for a couple years. We've been trying to get some really good information to bring out to you folks. And this is a little bit of that as we go through tonight. So a little background on the project. The funding partners for this project are Arapahoe County, City and County of Denver, Greenwood Village, and Denver South TMA. Other agencies that we've had involved from the very beginning on the project are our stakeholders, Dr. Cog, CDOT, FHWA, RTD, and Cherry Hills Village have been involved since day one. And these groups have provided folks both at the technical level, which make up our technical advisory committee, and at an executive level, whether it's elected officials or agency executives that make up our executive committee. The technical advisory committee met pretty much monthly throughout that 2-year period to assess again the technical analysis for the alternatives as we move through the screening process. And the executive committee was engaged at certain important milestones, decision-making milestones that were necessary to keep the project moving forward at different times. So it's been a great group, a very engaged group, and a lot of different opinions, a lot of different angles, which gets us to a really great product. And it's been a good process here for the last couple of years. So one thing that's been consistent since the very beginning of the project has been our purpose and need. Why are we here? And what problems are we trying to solve? Now, I'm not going to read this whole slide to everybody, but the information is here. And the piece that I want to highlight is that the purpose of the project is to reduce current and future congestion, improve traffic operations and safety, and enhance multimodal choices and connectivity for all users in the interchange. That's why we're here. The problem that we're trying to solve is based in traffic congestion, user safety, and the lack of multimodal choices and connectivity. This purpose and need has remained consistent since the day it was blessed by the executive committee in September of 2018. This is important because as we move through the alternative screening process, looked at what could be done to improve operations of this interchange, it was important to have that consistent guide all the way along. Are we answering these questions? Are we staying true to why we're here and what problems we're trying to solve? And we've been able to do that. And this has been a good guide for us throughout that process. So I'm going to talk a little bit here about the evaluation criteria. Another piece that was consistent throughout after we developed the purpose and need was, okay, how are we going to evaluate these alternatives? First, against the purpose and need, making sure that it meets their and fatal flaw, and then looking at comparing alternatives against each other. What metrics are we going to use? What performance metrics are going to be available for us to look at? And this was settled on by the entire technical advisory committee and then eventually the executive committee as well. We were looking at traffic operations, safety, multimodal for pedestrians, bicycles, and transit. Community impacts was a huge part of the conversation, from access to environmental, right-of-way, and then construction and constructability. Those are very important pieces into deciding which alternatives operate better than others as we move through the screening process. And then, of course, cost. Cost is a big factor. Money doesn't grow on trees. We all understand the financial situation that we find ourselves in this industry. Money is limited, and so we have to be smart about how we spend it. And cost was a part of our conversation. So it's really important to understand that both the purpose and need and the evaluation criteria here, once developed in late 2018, stayed consistent all the way through. As we got into different conversations from a technical standpoint, it was important to bring ourselves back and say, hey, are we staying true to these performance metrics that we agreed on? Have we answered all of these questions as we go through the process? So before we go any further, kind of looking at the alternative screening process and then what alternatives came out of that process, want to take a pause here real quick, introduce you to Roger Sherman. He's assisting here the project team from a public involvement standpoint, and he has a poll question for us to get to. Roger?
All right, good evening, everyone. Here is our first polling question, and it is, which two alternatives or two evaluation criteria best reflect your priorities and values as a user of the interchange? So it's a multiple choice. You can pick as many as you'd like. Which two evaluation criteria best reflect your priorities and values as a user? Just click on click there on the screen. We'll give it a minute to let everyone vote that's on the meeting before we close this out. We're moving along quickly. Got about half of you voted. All right, last call for those that would like to vote. We appreciate your input. I'm going to end the poll, and I will share the results with everyone so you can see the results, and hand it back to John.
Thank you, Roger. Really appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for participating in the poll. This information is really important for us to understand how the process that we've been executing, matches up, again, with the values and priorities that the users of the interchange have. This information will really help us give context to the comments and questions that we get throughout this public involvement period. And there's really interesting information here. It looks like pretty clear favorites to traffic operations and community impacts. That's pretty consistent, and I think that's great information. So again, thank you all. We will have two more poll questions as we go through the presentation here, so please look for those. We'll bring Roger back on to execute those for us. All right, so back into the presentation here. We went through a three-tiered alternatives development and screening process, and I'm going to go through all of the details here. A lot of that information, again, is on the full presentation video from October 7th. That's up on the project website, where we go into a tremendous amount of detail about each of these screening areas. What's important to understand is that we start with a wide range of alternatives. We compare those against the purpose and need, make sure that it meets the answers to the questions. And then level one is based on fatal flaw. Is there anything in the alternative that makes it a fatal flaw? It simply can't be built. Isn't possible, can't be constructed, something like that. We only had two alternatives that were screened out from a fatal flaw perspective: new crossings of I-25 from the landmark south of Belleview, and those were felt by the project team, everybody involved, to be a fatal flaw. So then we moved into level two screening, a qualitative analysis. There were about 10 alternatives, interchange alternatives, that made it through to level two. The important thing here is to understand we're no longer comparing alternatives against a fatal flaw or against a purpose and need. These have all been demonstrated to meet those requirements. Now we're comparing alternatives against each other. So it's a matter of how well the alternatives operate, how well the alternatives do compared to the other alternatives in the list. And so it's not that some of the alternatives that were screened out on level two wouldn't work. They just wouldn't work as well as the alternatives that made it forward into level three. And again, the evaluation criteria that we just looked at, that list and the list of performance metrics in the poll that you just participated in, were used here from a qualitative standpoint in level two. Now, three build alternatives plus the no build made it through into level three. And this is important because we needed to reduce the amount of alternatives down to get to a point where we could conduct a very detailed traffic analysis. We build a traffic model. We run the traffic analysis through that model for each of the alternatives, and it's just simply not cost effective or time effective to be able to do that with a high number of alternatives. We need to get that down to about 2 or 3, and we were able to do that here. We're going to talk a little bit more about those alternatives and what the results were sort of getting into level 3 and sort of where we are now. As the arrow indicates here on the slide, we have not yet completed level 3 analysis. We're here towards the end, wanting to present the information to the public, get feedback, get comments on the process, and sort of where we are before that final decision is made. So let's jump right in. Before I dive into the SPUI here, one of the alternatives that made it through to level 3 screening was a diverging diamond interchange. Really early on in the traffic analysis, the quantitative analysis, that alternative was found to just not measure up. In fact, it was operating worse than the no build condition. No build being, if we do nothing out here, what is the condition of traffic? And any alternative we have that's operating worse than the no build, it just doesn't make sense to continue passing forward. So early on in the process for level 3, that was screened out, which left us with 2 main build alternatives and the no build, where we went through that detailed traffic analysis, that quantitative analysis. The first one of those is the SPUI. It's a split dime or a single point urban interchange, affectionately called the SPUI. And that's the term I'll use as we go through here. It takes the 2 ramp intersections that exist today, so the I-25 ramp intersections that come down to Belleview, and it consolidates them into 1 intersection underneath the I-25 bridge. So you can see here that those 2 ramps kind of come in and converge to a point under the I-25 bridge. This helps in traffic operations immensely because it takes 4 signalized intersections and makes them 3. Just by removing 1 signalized intersection, you get a benefit of operations on Bellevue Avenue itself. So that's the big key to a single point and why it was so effective here in our analysis. We're going to go through now a little bit on the design elements of the single point urban interchange, what makes it work, and a little bit of the highlights of some of those construction pieces. Before I do that, you'll notice there's 2 different colors of improvements shown on these graphics. The light blue are the actual roadway construction improvements that would be needed to build the SPUI. The pink or magenta colored are multimodal improvements. And I want to highlight a couple of those before we go too far. On the south side of Bellevue, there are sidewalk connections that they currently don't connect today. And we are planning with either alternative on this project to be able to make that connection on the south side of Bellevue. So no matter which alternative moves forward, we will be putting in a sidewalk on the south side of Bellevue. In addition, we want to be able to add a multimodal bicycle and pedestrian grade separated crossing of I-25. This is to aid and provide flexibility in users of the interchange to get across I-25 whichever way they feel best. You'll see 2 locations shown here, one just on the south side of Union and one kind of mid-block between Bellevue and Union. Only one of those will be selected to be a part of the interchange alternative when we get to that point at the end. The reason we're showing 2 here is that we've narrowed it down to 2 locations, but we need a little bit more design. We need to move these 2 locations to the next level of design and really continue evaluating them further for which one is going to work best for all the different performance metrics that are a part of the conversation. So these graphics will show both locations, but again, please remember only one of those locations will be chosen to move forward, and that decision will be made in the next level of design at a later date. All right, back to the SPUI. How is this thing going to operate? Well, in order to build the SPUI, we need to do some pretty significant reconstruction on Bellevue itself. This is important to note because there's lanes that are being added, different lane configurations that are being incorporated, which will impact Bellevue Avenue during construction. And it's one of the important pieces as a user of the interchange to be aware. Some pretty significant reconstruction of Bellevue Avenue is necessary because all of the improvements in a single point are on that main road, and that'd be Bellevue Avenue in this case. So that's what the light blue here indicates is where that reconstruction would need to take place on Bellevue. This slide indicates where those ramp terminals come in. So all 4, so southbound and northbound, will come into that single point, that single intersection underneath the I-25 bridge, which we talked about earlier, and again is part of the benefit that you get in traffic operations, consolidating from 4 intersections down to 3. In order to provide that intersection underneath I-25, about a half a mile of I-25 is going to need to be reconstructed as well. This extends about a quarter mile north and south of Bellevue itself. And the reason that I-25 needs to be reconstructed is that the bridge, the I-25 bridge over Bellevue, needs to be replaced. This is because in order to create the SPUI underneath, the bridge needs to raise in profile by about 8 feet. Now, it's important to note that CDOT has told us as a project partner all the way along, this bridge it does not need to be replaced. It's not structurally deficient. It meets all of its safety requirements. So it's a good functioning bridge today and doesn't need to be replaced. What requires the replacement again is that full interchange underneath I-25. Profile of I-25 at the bridge needs to go up 8 feet, and that needs to chase out a quarter mile in each direction to be able to tie into the existing grade of I-25. So the SPUI requires reconstruction of Bellevue Avenue and a small reconstruction here on I-25 as well with the bridge. So let's talk about the SPUI itself, technical advantages of the SPUI. Again, this is one of our final two alternatives along with the no build that we've come to here through our alternative screening process. Why does the SPUI work? What are the advantages of the SPUI? Well, it takes those 3 or 4 intersections and reduces them to 2. The 2 ramp intersections become 1. There's also an overall lower risk of environmental impacts based on the conceptual design and where we sit today. There are no improvements for the SPUI outside of Bellevue Avenue and I-25. So some of the local roads like Union, for example, are not impacted. They're not improved by this alternative. And so that the community feel and sort of the northern part of that interchange is maintained by locating the improvements on Bellevue and then construction on I-25. Lower estimated right-of-way impacts, and of course it includes the grade separated crossings of I-25, the bicycle and pedestrian crossings. So at this point, before we jump into the second of our 2 alternatives here, we want to take a break, bring Roger back in for a poll question. And this poll question really is focused on the SPUI itself, not in comparison to anything else, but based on what you just heard for the SPUI, how does that meet your needs as a user? So Roger, do you want to pull up that specific poll question and dive into it?
Here it is. This is the SPUI alternatives. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest, how well does the SPUI alternative meet your needs as a user of the interchange? 1 is lowest, 5 is highest. We'll give it a minute to let everyone on vote. All right, we've got about 2/3 of you. Last call, if some of you still want to provide your input before we close this out. All right, I'll close it out and share the results with you. And there you go, John.
Yeah, great. I appreciate that, Roger. This is, again, this is great information for us to be able to understand, how this information is being received, and for you guys to let us know how this particular alternative seems to meet your needs. There'll be more information as we go through the rest of the presentation tonight, but that was a good snapshot for us to be able to understand your thoughts on the SPUI there. So thank you so much again for providing information. All right, let's take a look at the second of our 2 final alternatives here, this being the split diamond interchange with Union. So this one, instead of the impacts and the improvements being focused on Bellevue and on I-25, the impacts here are focused on a new intersection at Union. So how this will operate is that folks, for example, and we'll get into some more of the details here in a second, but it takes the single interchange at Bellevue and it splits that into 2 different locations. So folks will still be able to access Bellevue and they'll be able to access Union in this new configuration. What that does is disperse traffic throughout the interchange in a different way, using multiple locations for access as opposed to just the one on Bellevue, which has some impacts throughout the interchange that we're going to talk about here in a second. So by constructing the interchange this way, the big point with the split diamond and why it advanced to this stage of the project is it relieves traffic on Bellevue and disperses it throughout different parts of the interchange. For example, about 12 to 15% of the traffic on Bellevue is reduced by about 12 to 15% in this alternative. By taking 12 to 15% of the cars off of Bellevue, Bellevue operates better. It makes a major difference in the model. 12 to 15% in this industry, in this kind of instance, is huge. That's a really big reduction in traffic volumes, just folks wanting to utilize that roadway. And what that does is it takes about an additional 30 to 34% of traffic on Union. So folks are able to get to where they want to go in the northern part of the interchange, east or west of I-25, without having to go down to Bellevue and then turn around and go back. And so by reducing traffic on Bellevue, increasing traffic on Union, the interchange as a whole operates better. And again, we're going to get into some more of the details on how that works here moving forward. You'll see in the pink colors again, sidewalk on the south side of Bellevue, the 2 locations of the grade separated crossing for bicycles and pedestrians. of I-25, of which only one will be chosen in a future design phase. And then you'll see blue and pink hatched on Union. There are both roadway improvements and multimodal enhancements as mitigation for Union Avenue itself by putting 2 new intersections up there. So you see the 2 stoplights on Union. Those are 2 new intersections that do not exist today that will carry traffic from I-25 and I-225 to Union, and then traffic can proceed on to Bellevue. So let's get into a little bit of the details of how the split diamond will operate. First, northbound. So the difference is that folks wanting to access the northern part of the interchange would have multiple options. Folks getting off I-25 northbound at Bellevue can go east and west on Bellevue, or they can proceed on a new ramp road that will be elevated from where it is today and will meet up with Union as it crosses I-25, where it'll come to a new intersection. Folks can go east and west at that intersection, or they can proceed north and access I-25 and access 225. So access to and from I-25 and 225 on Union is the big difference here. So let's take a look northbound. This is what we see today, that the ramp from Bellevue northbound to I-25 and to 225 currently proceed underneath Union. In the proposed configuration for the split diamond, this ramp would go up to and meet at Union with a new intersection, and folks would be able to access Union Avenue or continue on to I-25 and 225. So it takes this current ramp that goes under Union and it elevates it to meet up at grade with Union. So movements throughout the interchange. Every movement that you have today, you'll have in the future when it comes to the split diamond. Folks will just be able to have more flexibility in how they want to get there. The orange arrows indicate access to Bellevue from I-25, and the blue arrows to Union from I-25. So if you wanted to get to Union in this instance, you'd exit northbound I-25 at Bellevue, proceed through the Bellevue intersection up to Union, and you could go east or west on Union. Same thing, if you are on Bellevue or you are on Union, you have access to I-25 northbound. This is a more important part to articulate. If you're on Bellevue, you'll be able to access I-25. You'll make that turn to go northbound, the same location you do today at the end of that ramp terminal. You would proceed up to Union. You'd go through that Union intersection and get on I-25. If you are on Union, the new piece here is that you will be able to access I-25 northbound without having to go down to Bellevue. You'd be able to access I-25 northbound right from Union. So again, dispersing traffic in a different way, getting folks to where they want to be more efficiently. Same thing for 225. How you access 225 today from I-25 or the black arrows, that access remains, nothing changes there. If you're on Bellevue and you want to access 225, you'd proceed up to Union, go through that intersection and take the ramp to 225. If you're on Union, you'd also be able to access 225. So all movements maintained in the split diamond. Let's take a look southbound. Important to note here for southbound is that the exit from I-25 stays the same. That does not change. That long ramp that goes from I-25 southbound peels off and heads towards Bellevue. The point where you exit I-25 doesn't change. And along that ramp as it comes through underneath 225 ramp doesn't change. What will change is that instead of proceeding underneath Union, this ramp will proceed up to Union where there's a new intersection. Folks wanting to move on to Bellevue, just go through that intersection down to Bellevue. Folks wanting to go east and west on Union would have the ability to do that. So the entrance point or the exit from southbound I-25 stays in the same location. What it does from there is go up to Union. Instead of currently, it goes under Union onto Bellevue. So how that'll operate, you know, again, the blue arrows indicate that folks will be able to exit I-25, get up to Union, go east and west, or the orange arrows continue on to Bellevue and go east to west along Bellevue. If you're on Union and Bellevue and you want to access southbound I-25, you'd be able to do that through this interchange design as well. And then folks from 225, if they want to go southbound on I-25, those black arrows, just as they do today, same movement, would be able to, nothing changes. If folks from 225 want to access Union, they'd be able to now go up to the new intersection on Union, go east-west. If folks from 225 wanted to access Bellevue, they would go up to the Union, proceed through that intersection and down to Bellevue where you can go east and west. So this slide indicates improvements on Bellevue. Very few improvements on Bellevue. Because we're reducing in this proposal, this alternative, we're reducing traffic by 12 to 15%. There's not a lot of construction on Bellevue that's necessary. So you see down at Syracuse, just east of there's some turning movement, some turning lane, improvements that are necessary there to be able to access Syracuse, from westbound Bellevue. That's the only change on Union. The reduction in traffic volume creates the operational benefit. So Union Avenue itself. Now we've talked about not much impact to Bellevue at all. No impact to I-25. That stays open all the way through construction. No need to replace the bridge. So where are the impacts? The impacts are on Union. We're creating 2 new intersections on Union that don't currently exist today. So those 2 new intersections will go in. As part of that, we've been working with our project partners, our stakeholders throughout on what impact will that have on the multimodal connectivity, folks using Union for bikes, for pedestrians, as transit. And so we've worked with the team to be able to understand what those impacts could be and build in some mitigation to help offset some of those impacts. So we're talking about wider buffers between the sidewalk and the bike lanes, buffers between the bike lanes and the transit lanes, being able to, again, provide that flexibility for folks to still be able to get across Union on a bike or walking. And if the added traffic on Union is too much of an impact, that grade separated crossing of I-25, the new one that's going in, would provide that flexibility, another option for folks to be able to get across I-25. So let's talk a little bit about the technical advantages of the split diamond. Based on all of the performance metrics for traffic operations as a whole, this alternative operates best for vehicle traffic operations throughout the interchange. Again, that's because by being able to reduce traffic on Bellevue, the increased traffic on Union, folks are getting to where they want to be more efficiently. That allows the interchange as a whole to operate better. And so that's important to note here. The other thing is this alternative can be constructed without replacing the I-25 bridge over Bellevue, without impacting I-25, and with minimal impacts to Bellevue. That's important from a construction standpoint because the construction impacts to the traveling public are less in this alternative. Again, this alternative includes the grade separated bicycle pedestrian crossing of I-25. So that's involved in both, part of both alternatives here. So similar to the last question, we want to bring in Roger, ask a poll question here. The split diamond in and of itself, based on kind of the run through that we just heard, how does that alternative meet your needs? Roger?
All right, here we go. This is similar to the last poll, and I'm launching it now. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest, how well does the split diamond alternative meet your needs as a user of the interchange? Please record your votes now. I'll give it a second to let everyone give us their opinion before I share the results, close it and share the results. We've still got about 10 of you that haven't voted. I'll give you one more second if you'd like to vote. And all right. Great. Here we go. There are the results, John. A little more split, but 50% did vote 1 on this particular alternative.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. Appreciate that. Again, appreciate everybody's votes here on these 2 alternatives and the process as a whole, kind of where we fit into the conversation. This information helps us tremendously as we're digesting all of the public comment that we get throughout this 3-week-long public involvement period. So thank you again, everybody, for voting here tonight, or filling out the poll tonight. It's not a vote. All right, let's take a look at overall a comparison of the split diamond and the alternative, and kind of what the analysis, what the technical data is telling us. So we have a lot of data that goes into this slide, trying to understand, make heads or tails of 2 alternatives that are really apples and oranges. There's not a whole lot between these 2 alternatives that are the same. One heavily impacts Bellevue and I-25, the other one doesn't, but it impacts Union. It's really hard to sort of find a lot of common ground. The very bottom of the slide presents a statement that I want to make sure everybody understands and where there is common ground between these two alternatives. Both of them perform better than the no build. This is important to understand. Both the SPUI and the split diamond perform better than the no build. In all evaluation criteria except a couple. Cost being one, there's no cost with the no build, and so it wins on cost. It also wins on construction impacts because there is no construction. So aside from those two obvious categories, both of these alternatives perform better than the no build. Now, apples and oranges sort of play out in this summary of the evaluation criteria as you go down through and look at it. If you look down towards the bottom, second to last toggle, construction and constructability. The opportunity in the split diamond to be able to leave Bellevue and I-25 open during construction, that's huge for construction impacts. The split diamond also has the ability to be phased over time. You could do just the east side, just the west side. The phasing allows more flexibility, more opportunity to construct this in a way that has less impact on the traveling public. But if you take a look at some of the community impacts that we talked about earlier, this SPUI shows up as having lower overall environmental impacts. And when you're looking at the northern part of the interchange, being able to maintain the community character that's up there, that's an important part of the SPUI. So when you look at the trade-offs and the balancing of what it is we're dealing with when we're looking at both of these alternatives, you can see it's not a simple equation. It's not an obvious choice as to which one meets the needs of the user better. It depends on the priorities and the values of the user, which is why we're asking those questions tonight. We're trying to get a lot of that feedback tonight to help us understand, again, the values and the priorities of the users of this interchange, because these two alternatives improve that interchange in very different ways. Okay, a couple things that we want to dive into now that are a little bit more specific to how are these alternatives going to affect the communities around. One of the things we learned early on with either of these alternatives, with whatever alternative is ultimately chosen to move forward, is that the interchange operates better if you take a look at improving Quebec, or the Quebec and Bellevue intersection, and the Syracuse and Bellevue intersection. Those are key. Both of the alternatives, the SPUI and the split diamond that we're looking at for the interchange, include improvements to Quebec and to Syracuse intersections. We're still working through all of those and what those can be. There's a couple different options that we have sort of on the table, and that's being advanced to the next level of design because we simply don't have the right level of design at this conceptual stage to be able to answer all of the questions associated with those intersection impacts. What we have been able to determine is that by adding those intersection improvements to either the SPUI or the split diamond, traffic operations get better. They get a little better in the split diamond than they do in the SPUI, but these intersection improvements enhance both alternatives moving forward, and they will be a part of the design of the project moving forward. We just need a little bit higher level of design to be able to figure out what is the best improvement at each of those intersections. So please know that is something that will be carried forward in the project. All right, let's talk some specifics about Cherry Hills Village. We've been working first with Jim Thorson and now with Chris Kramer, city engineers with Cherry Hills Village, have been a part of our TAC. The mayor has been a part of our executive committee from the beginning. And we understand there's a couple very specific questions, topics that Cherry Hills Village wants addressed as part of this improvement, wants more information, wants to understand. So it's part of what we get to do tonight is talk about those in a little more detail. Cut through traffic, all right, throughout the Cherry Hills Village, and how is that affected by the interchange improvements that we're discussing here? We're going to look at that on the next slide. The overall traffic operations analysis has shown us that the SPUI and the split diamond neither benefit nor impact the existing traffic volumes in the specific Cherry Hills Village connection areas where we typically see cut through. That's at Quincy and Happy Canyon. So Quincy, Monaco, and Happy Canyon is a gateway intersection for the community. We understand that. Cherry Hills Village representatives have been very clear on that. So how do these two alternatives affect that intersection? Again, the overall analysis is showing us that it neither reduces the amount of cut through that is seen through there. It also doesn't add to it. And let's take a look at that here with this slide. So what we're looking at is the worst condition of the day. It's the PM peak traffic volumes. These are two-way traffic volumes, so the road as a whole in both directions for certain links throughout the intersection, the interchange. Specifically, we were asked to look at Happy Canyon, Quincy, Monaco. What are the traffic volumes there now? What are they in the no build? And then how do the SPUI and the split diamond change those traffic volumes? So if you look in the upper left corner, what's important to understand is that the no build and the SPUI, the left graphic is the no build and the SPUI. First off, why are those the same? Well, the SPUI only impacts and improves Belleview at the interchange. And because of that, the traffic volumes throughout the interchange, there's no improvements made to other roads, no connections made to other roadways. The SPUI and the no build traffic volumes are consistent in 2040. And that's important to understand. Why 2040? Well, in this industry, the federal process requires us to look at a horizon year. We can't just answer the question of today, fix the problem of today. We got to look out in the future and make sure that any improvements have longevity out to a certain year. Our horizon year on this project is 2040. So these alternatives have to work in 20 years. And that's why that number exists there. So again, looking at the upper left corner, in the no build and the SPUI, so if we do nothing at all, or if we do the SPUI, we're looking in 1 p.m. peak hour, 1,900 vehicles going both directions through that intersection. In the split diamond, the graphic on the right, that number is 1,890. It's a difference of 10 vehicles, which is well within the margin of error for the level of analysis that we're at right now. So that is why the analysis was shown to be able to have no reduction in cut-through traffic or the traffic volumes in these links, but no increase either. So if we do nothing out at I-25 in Bellevue, the vehicle traffic volumes will be 1,900 through that intersection. If we do the SPUI, it stays at 1,900. If we do the split diamond, it's a difference of about 10 vehicles. Now, what does this do to the rest of the interchange? So let's take a look at Bellevue. In the no build and in the SPUI, the Bellevue numbers are shown below on the lower part of the graphic. In the split diamond, as I mentioned previously in the presentation, those numbers are significantly reduced by about 12% in the PM peak hour here. So the volumes on Bellevue go down. The volumes on Union go up. But where are those people going? Are they going north on Monaco to get towards Cherry Hills Village? The numbers here show that they're not. If you look at Monaco north of Union, it's a difference of 150 vehicles in this peak hour, talking about 3,320 with a reduction in the split diamond down to 3,170. This is important to note because our analysis shows that folks aren't using Union in the split diamond to travel north on Monaco and get to the Happy Canyon Quincy intersection. They're going to the development that is between Union and Bellevue on the west side of I-25 in large part. A lot of folks are also using this to go westbound on Bellevue outside and away from the interchange, or going east of the interchange for better access there. So folks are using Union to get to where they're already going today and would already go in the SPUI. They're just getting there a different way, getting there more efficiently. So again, the analysis shows us that by adding in an intersection ramps at Union, more vehicles are not traveling north on Monaco and getting to Quincy and Happy Canyon. It's important to note that because that's been a big conversation, a big part of the questions from Jim Thorson and Chris Kramer and others from Cherry Hills Village is what is the impact? The reality is there's not much of an impact. Either benefiting or negatively impacting the amount of vehicles on Happy Canyon and Quincy north of the interchange. The other questions that we got was about Bellevue Avenue specifically. Folks from Cherry Hills Village are using this interchange in one of two ways, either from the north through Quincy, Happy Canyon, and Monaco, or Bellevue itself. And so what do the two alternatives do for Belleview? We've looked at vehicle volumes. We know the split diamond reduces volumes, but what does it do for travel time? This is a great metric to be able to understand. If you're sitting in your car, how long does it take you to get from A to B? I want to draw your attention to the shaded boxes here on this graphic. The top ones show that for from Monaco to I-25, so the left-bound or left turn lanes to northbound I-25, from Monaco to those turn lanes, how long does it take you to do that in the AM and the PM, eastbound? That's important. Both of these are compared to the no build. So a reduction of in the SPUI of 0.1 or 1.8 minutes and 2.8 minutes in the split diamond are over the no build. So it's a 2-minute benefit in the SPUI. It's almost a 3-minute benefit in the split diamond. From Monaco to DTC, if you're going all the way through the interchange, not wanting to go northbound on I-25, just going all the way through the interchange, what is the benefit of each of these alternatives? If you're looking again at the SPUI eastbound in the AM actually is worse than the no build by about half a minute. But in the PM, it's a 2.5-minute benefit. For the split diamond, you're looking at a 4-minute benefit in the PM and just over a minute benefit in the AM. So what this articulates is that by removing a certain percentage of vehicles from Belleview and having folks disperse throughout the interchange in a more effective way, the travel times for folks going eastbound, say from Cherry Hills Village towards the interchange, the travel times are greatly reduced over the no build, and the split diamond has better travel times than the SPUI does. And it's simply because traffic is being relieved from Bellevue, the whole section can operate better. So now a little bit specific for the Cherry Hills residents. This is a community forum here to talk about specific issues there. It's important that we walk through those. I'm sure we'll have a couple questions on them. But real quick, at the end of the presentation here, I want to go back out big picture a little bit, let folks know where we are in the overall process here. We've been doing this again for about 2 years now, a really detailed analysis of the alternatives to get to where we are today. Where we are today is that we have, our executive committee has a decision to make on how to move forward with the project. This is not going to happen tomorrow. Construction of this will not happen tomorrow. There's a process that needs to go through for the next couple of years. And it's important to note a couple things about this schedule. Right now, we do not have construction funding for this project, either alternative. The funding that has been identified is on different plans. For example, CDOT has a 5 to 10 year kind of horizon plan where they're looking out to plan future projects. This project is on that list for about $50 million, which is approximately half the cost of the project. Both the SPUI and the split diamond are within $105 to $115 million to construct. No real difference in cost there. But it's important to know that CDOT's 5 to 10 year plan, where half the funding is identified there, is unfunded. That's an unfunded plan. It's better to be on the plan than not, as you're competing against other projects for limited funding resources. But it is not a funded plan. So that's why I say we currently do not have construction funding today. So what are we going to do moving forward? Hopefully we get to move to the next stage of design here, which would be preliminary design and the federal processes that go along with that. Here over the next couple of years. During that time, we would continue looking for additional funding and execution of the various plans that are out there to identify funding, secure funding for this project, and then hopefully be able to move into that construction stage sometime after that process is complete. When would that be complete? We don't have specific numbers today. Without identified construction funding, secured construction funding, we can't be too specific. But I will note that the first year of CDOT's 5 to 10 year plan would be in 2025. So the idea would be that we spend the time now to continue moving forward through the design, continue executing the federal processes that are necessary out there, and identifying potential funding sources so that as funding becomes available, this project is ready to go to take advantage of it and compete well against other projects for it. So again, the IProveI25Bellevue.com website is sort of our central clearinghouse of everything for the project. We want to be able to post videos, project documents. A lot of detailed information is there, including the video from last week, the full video of the project. Please take a look at that if you get a chance. It's really important to have all the information available. You can also submit comments through that website, continue engaging on the project as we move forward. We're going to be collecting comments specifically for this stage of the project through October 28th. It's a 3-week period. We're collecting as many comments as we can, as much public feedback as possible, to really help our executive committee make a decision on how best to move forward with the project. That's the feedback we want. We want to understand, how do these alternatives meet your values and priorities as a user, to help those folks, combining the technical analysis with the public feedback that we get through this process, for those executive committee folks to weigh both of those and make a decision on how best to move forward with the project. This will not be your last opportunity to engage. We're not going to shut the project website down or the ability to comment after the 28th. That will remain open throughout the life of the project, and there will be more funding public engagement opportunities like this to be able to work through various project stages as it moves forward. So please don't think this is your last opportunity. Take the time, review the information on the website, and we encourage you to comment and provide feedback throughout the process. That is our presentation for tonight. I really appreciate everybody being here to get this information. I believe, let's see, we have about 28 folks still on the line here, which is great. I think there's a few comments in the question and answer. So I'm going to bring Roger back in, and he's going to kind of take a look at what questions are in the Q&A, and let's see what we can do about answering some of those. I'm not here by myself tonight. I have a couple other folks from the consultant team here at Wilson & Company to be able to answer different questions as they come in, depending on the topic area. And I think we're ready to move to that stage.
All right, John, here's our first question. Was this considered? Purchase the land on the corner next to Cooney Lexus so that the northbound traffic on Quebec could go directly onto I-25 and avoid the Belleview Quebec intersection?
So that's a good question. We looked at a wide range of alternatives for folks moving through there. Actually, the two alternatives that were screened out from a fatal flaw perspective in level 1 screening had different configurations of what to do south of Bellevue, using sort of the progress as a street through landmark there is what can be done. The reason they were fatal flaw screened out is that the land between Cooney and I-25 just isn't sufficient enough to be able to do anything without requiring major right-of-way from the businesses in the landmark to be able to get vehicles configured in the right way, and be able to use that land sort of south and west of the interchange there between the landmark and I-25. So unfortunately, just not enough space to get vehicles in the right configuration to be able to make use of that movement, but it is something that we did look at early on.
All right, next question. What is the prediction for where traffic heading west on Union will go?
Ah, fantastic. Yes. So the traffic that comes from I-25, 225, and is now able to access Union goes west from the I-25, from that ramp intersection. Where does that traffic want to go? I want to bring in Scott Waterman and Maureen Paz de Rougeau, two folks from our project team that really got heavily involved in the traffic analysis, led our traffic analysis effort, and can better answer where does traffic want to go westbound on Union. Where do they go? Maureen, would you like to take the first shot at this?
Yeah, I'm not sure that Scott is back on. So a lot of that traffic that you see on Union is related to the Bellevue Station development. It's a case where the origin or destination, because this is two-way traffic, is actually in that area between Union and Bellevue. So I think, actually I'm looking at the Q&A, you also have a question about, or somebody does, about what's happening here. And I can describe how we did the modeling. We used the DRCOG regional model, but we refined it within the study area so that there was greater detail. And some of that traffic that is higher with the SPUI could be traffic that would otherwise use another interchange, another route to get to this area because of the congestion on Bellevue. The other thing that we did relative to looking at it is to evaluate this like you would a traffic impact study, where we have the regional model as the background traffic, and then we looked at the traffic generated and attracted to the TOD and distributed that to the network. So having the access at Union, since a lot of that traffic is oriented to that area, that quadrant of the interchange, helps get traffic off Bellevue and gets them to where they want to get efficiently.
Yeah, so if I could summarize real quick, Maureen, they're in the split diamond with access at Union, there are a higher number of folks, obviously, that are able to go east as well. So folks that get off I-25 can go east on Union. That's why we see the increase in numbers on this slide here for the split diamond. So folks are able to go east without going down to Bellevue and then east. And then folks that come west, again, a lot of those vehicles are using the TOD, the Denver development, San County Denver development that's there in that northwest quadrant. Folks that would get there as, you know, without Union, they would get there by utilizing Bellevue. Union gives them access more efficiently to be able to get into that development from the north side. So just again, a better dispersion of traffic throughout the interchange.
All right,
Roger?
here's the next question. Why was do nothing not an option in the polls?
Oh, great question. So the reason we're here, again, our purpose and need, if we go all the way back to that at the very beginning, is to make improvements to I-25 and Bellevue. So by getting feedback on first the SPUI Independent and then the Split Diamond Independent, we really want to know the thought process, the thoughts that folks have, how these work with the values and priorities of the users in the interchange. We understand that the no build is on the table. It's part of the alternatives, screening process as we go through. It'll be maintained all the way through the conversation as a comparison. But really our charge here as a project team is to figure out what the best improvements are. How can we improve the interchange? And because the no build doesn't improve the interchange, we left it out of the poll questions. We really want to know how the improvements match up with the values and priorities of the users.
All right, next up, what is the construction length for each of the plans?
Construction length. So I'm assuming between the two alternatives, how long would it take to construct each of them? It's a little bit difficult to answer at this stage of the project. We are very much in conceptual design. However, we can provide some ranges, some understanding of the impact here to the traveling public during construction. It's going to be a couple of years. It's not something that can be done within 1 year. This is a major improvement to a major thoroughfare for the tech center in and out of the communities here along the corridor. And it's important to understand this is going to be a multi-year process in either alternative. Now, the Split Diamond has a couple advantages over the SPUI when it comes to this particular performance metric. One, the Split Diamond can be phased. So if we don't get the full amount of funding, you could build pieces and parts of the Split Diamond, whereas the SPUI has to be built all at once. The other impact to the traveling public is on the SPUI is that Bellevue is under construction, a pretty significant reconstruction of Bellevue, and I-25 during this multi-year period. For the Split Diamond, Bellevue remains open during this multi-year period of construction, and so does I-25. No major improvements to either. Those improvements kind of happen offline on the side and to Union Avenue in the Split Diamond. So a little bit more flexibility. We're talking about a couple of years. What we really like to look at is what's the impact to the user in that couple of year period of time. Very different between the two alternatives.
All right, we have a couple options or a couple questions about that are similar. What option, SPUI or Split Diamond, does Greenwood Village favor, and why? We have another one that asks the same question and asks also about the city and county of Denver.
Sure. So we've had great discussions as a project team as we've gone through. Again, no final decision has been made on where we are. As far as how each of the different agencies feel about the alternative, I would really prefer that you ask them, and feel free to provide that comment, and we will get folks from each of the agencies to provide that response. As of now, they have not provided an official response to the project team saying, this is where we land, this would be our decision. We're not there yet. We wanted to engage the public in this process, marry that up with the technical analysis before each of the agencies kind of weighed in officially on exactly what their favor would be. And so I would encourage you to provide that comment, to those agencies specifically. Through this process, we will take that, and the agencies can respond accordingly.
All right, here's a question on peak traffic volume. The slide in the bottom left shows 7,035 vehicles exiting on Bellevue in the SPUI configuration and 6,330 vehicles in the split diamond. Where does the difference, 705 vehicles, go, if not down Quincy?
Sure. Okay, so a little bit in how you read these graphics. It's close to how the commenter phrased it, but just slightly differently. So this is total volumes on that segment of roadway. So using the example that the commenter gave in the bottom left, that's 7,035 vehicles, both directions added together, that are using that link, using Bellevue in that stretch of the corridor. That's for the no build and the SPUI. Why is that reduced in the split diamond? Because by 700 vehicles or so, why is that reduced? Mostly that's reduced because folks, again, using two-way on Bellevue that are in the no build and the SPUI have no other option of being able to get through the interchange in certain ways. A lot of those folks on Bellevue are being moved up and are utilizing Union because it's now available. And there's now access in the split diamond. And so there's an overall reduction of traffic on Bellevue throughout the length of Bellevue in the split diamond. So you'll see 7,000 down to 6,300. You'll see 5,700 down to 51, 5,800 down to 5,000. Those reductions, that's part of that 12% of reduction just by providing access at Union. We see that reduction, about 12% in the PM peak on Bellevue itself. So those are folks that don't need to use Bellevue to get to where they want to go. They're able to use other roads throughout the interchange because now there's access to it.
All right, next question. What is the grade of the climb up the loop onto the multimodal bridge?
Grade of the, okay. So for bikes and pedestrians on the new grade separated crossing of I-25, we have the two different options. I'm going to ask Danny Zamarripa to come in and provide a response to this. He's on our design team, and I think he will know more details of what is that grade for folks getting up and using those new crossings. Danny?
Yep. Yeah, that's a good question again. John mentioned that we're going to determine the final location of the PED bridge, one of the two that we've showed here. We'll also, through our preliminary design, determine the final configuration of those bridges. But either way, it'll meet the different criteria that we have, one of those being the ADA criteria. And there's a couple different ways to do that. You can do it with more of a steady grade or a sort of ramping grade with landings. The two that we show here would be a steady grade that would be less than 5% throughout. So
yeah, appreciate that, Danny.
That. Yep.
Thank you. So meeting ADA requirements, which is obviously a requirement of the project, going through the process that we are. Appreciate that. Thank you. Roger?
All right, next, has there been a peer review completed on your traffic counts? They asked specifically about the split diamond, but I would imagine it goes for both.
Yeah, so the Technical Advisory Committee actually had quite a few traffic specialists. CDOT's Region 1 traffic specialist is part of the Technical Advisory Committee. There's Wilson and Company folks. We had a project partner that was involved assisting Marine and the other folks on being able to develop those traffic numbers. So absolutely, the Technical Advisory Committee has seen all of the information. We've vetted it in a couple different ways. We've looked at it in a couple different ways. Folks have had a chance to review it and provide comments back throughout the process. That's been a really big part of what we've done here over about the last 12 to 15 months, especially. And the Technical Advisory Committee got to a point where everybody agreed that the process was completed in the right way. So yeah, fantastic.
All right, this goes to the traffic count question also. Says your traffic count suggests that there could be a 2.4 minute savings on eastbound Union from Monaco to I-25. It only takes 30 seconds or less right now. That gives this questioner concern over your counts.
Sure. What were the links again, Roger? Could you read the question again?
Yeah.
From
your
where to where?
traffic count suggests that there could be a 2.4 minute savings on eastbound Union from Monaco to I-25. It only takes 30 seconds or less right now. This gives me continued concerns over your counts.
John, do you want me to address that?
Well, I can. I'm curious to know where the information that the commenters is getting the information from, because we don't have Union from Monaco to I-25 here on the graphic. So I'm a little bit confused about that. But Maureen, you seem to understand maybe what the commenter is getting at. Do you want to take a shot here?
I just saw a fundamental maybe misunderstanding of the analysis, and that is we're not talking about existing. We're talking about the 2040 no build. That is what we're comparing it to. So if you
good point.
in mind that traffic is growing, it will grow, increase in 2040, then if we do nothing, the congestion that we see today would become worse.
Great. I'm really glad you jumped in there, Maureen. I was hearing that a different way, but yes. So all the comparisons that you see on a chart like this are compared to the 2040 no build, not to what you see today. And yeah, those traffic numbers are going up between today and 2040, even in the no build condition on Union, on these side streets, traffic volumes are projected to go up. Thank you, Maureen. That was great.
All right, here we go. How does eastbound traffic and northbound traffic from Quebec access northbound I-25? It says it does not solve the access currently.
Okay, read the beginning part again, please.
How does eastbound traffic and northbound traffic from Quebec access northbound I-25?
Yeah, so in either alternative, folks would be able to access northbound I-25 from those locations the same way they do today. So, folks traveling northbound on Quebec would make that right turn, and they would take the lefts to get to northbound I-25. What isn't discussed here in more greater detail are those intersection improvements at Quebec and Syracuse. Again, we're just too conceptual in the design phase right now to understand how each of those are going to work. But we fully understand as a project team that without addressing the Quebec and Bellevue intersection itself and how to move people through that intersection, we're not answering our full purpose and need here. So we've taken a look. There's a few different options at Quebec and Bellevue that enhance both the SPUI and the split diamond from an operations standpoint and would allow folks to get through that intersection more efficiently. We just need another level of design to be able to flesh those out in some more detail. But they have been shown to improve either alternative option. And we are fully aware Quebec is immensely important to the overall operations of the interchange here.
John, you mentioned on Syracuse too. Both of those intersections are very close to the ramp termini, so additional improvements are needed. And
Yep.
the other part is that if we reduce traffic on Bellevue, it will be improved.
Yep, agreed.
All right, last question that we've got. There's a couple others. Will northbound Quebec be redesigned so no direct access is allowed to Bellevue?
So it's pretty similar to the answer that we just gave at the intersection improvements on Quebec. So I think that answer kind of covers it. We are looking at what the issues are at Quebec. The main issues there at the intersection are the left turns. There's not enough queuing, and as the left turns occur, folks are stuck out in the intersection, and it messes with the rest of the movements that folks want to make. And so we're looking at ways to be able to address specifically the left turns at Quebec and Bellevue. And again, augment, support, enhance the two interchange alternatives that we're talking about here. In either alternative, we'll be looking at those improvements at Quebec and Bellevue. Was there one more question, Roger?
Nope, that is it in the queue.
All right, I want to welcome Chris back into the conversation here. Really, again, happy to be here tonight to be able to present, answer some questions from folks in the Cherry Hills Village community. Do you have any questions for us? Is there anything else you want to add to the conversation here, Chris?
At this point, I think this is helpful information for our residents. I do think it's helpful for us to understand that this will not be the last opportunity that we have to provide input. I do want to thank the consultant team, though, for taking the time to do a Cherry Hills Village specific meeting. Everyone should know that we are not a funding partner in this project, and yet the project team has taken the time to meet with just Cherry Hills Village residents. And when I say meet, I mean that obviously in a virtual sense. But we do appreciate you taking the time. This has many steps left, and we have been clear with the project team from the beginning, starting with my predecessor, Jim Thorson. I think the project team can confirm this. We do feel that some of the interests and needs and concerns that Cherry Hills Village residents have is different than some of the other surrounding jurisdictions. And so having the opportunity for input like this is critical so that our voice is heard. And so I'm glad to know that this won't be the last chance for, whether it's Cherry Hills Village specific or just in general, that there'll be further opportunities for our residents to have their voice heard. I would recommend that if you are interested in this project as it moves along, to bookmark the project website, as there will be continued information put on there especially as we exit this stage on the 28th of October and continue to move forward with this throughout. So,
John, sorry to interrupt, Chris, you might want to throw that last slide up, John, that shows those.
That would be a good idea.
Again.
Yeah, there we go. And the other element to this that I guess I would add is we are going to work with the project team to get a video of tonight's presentation onto the city's website so that village residents can continue to refer back to this for the information they heard and hear some of the questions and answers. So unless the project team has anything else.
No, Chris, we appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and thank you and Jim Thorson as well, others throughout Cherry Hills Village for being a part of the team here. Maybe not a funding partner, but a very key stakeholder, and you guys have been great about being a part of the process from the beginning and then consistently all the way through to where we are today. Look forward to working with you as we move the project forward. So thank you again for the opportunity.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, and hopefully everybody has a good evening.